Right, and welcome back to the second part of the interview, and where we will be doing an AMA for this second part. We have members asking questions typed out in chat, and they will also be asking the questions themselves. So back over to Michael with the first question.
Yeah, the topic is still source of funds and Bitcoin and anything related to that. And Connor Murray asked to Craig Wright, source of funds requirements and fungibility as a product of law vary between countries. Please explain how fungibility is baked into existing laws and advice for Bitcoin-based businesses that will operate in various countries.
The way to look at this would be to treat it as cash or a similar asset. I mean, there are separate notes, separate IDs in every note. I mean, you have a serial number. So with cash, it's not completely pseudonymous or anything like this anyway. There are traceabilities. There have been crimes solved, Yorkshire Ripper in England, because of serial numbers and tracing where funds went to and from. So the reality here is Bitcoin's no different. So if you received money and it's a gift, then too bad, you can lose it. That's just the way that the world works. If you receive it through commercial exchange, then that's a different issue. So if you are doing a valid legal exchange, not buying drugs or anything like this, then when you go and you're at the store and you receive cash, then it's yours, as long as it's without knowledge. If you just saw someone outside steal the money and then bring it in and buy goods, I'm sorry, you lose it. So it has to be for commerce without knowledge. Now, I can't talk about every country. I can mention and refer to the US, Canada, Britain, of course, Australia, common law countries. I know those ones. I don't really understand all of the intricacies of Japanese law or Taiwanese law or something like this. So I wouldn't be the person to ask on any of those topics.
All right.
Okay, over to the next question. We have HV. If you, I will unmute you and you can, oh, there you go, and ask your question.
Yeah, hi, you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, perfect. Nice to meet you. So my question is related to the alert key. As you worked as an accountant, I think it must be something that is enhancing the risk, such a thing that AML and KYC compliance workers will use to trigger to get into an enhanced risk scenario to do something, to do plausibility and ask back why is there an alert. So I think that might be the idea, if I'm correct.
In part, but I mean, it will generally be stolen keys that are subject to freezing orders, court orders, etc. So the alert key should be rare. I mean, people seem to think that it's going to happen all the time, but the majority of funds are not high value. Used as digital cash, you shouldn't have someone sitting on billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. You might have corporations, but corporations aren't people. They're logically people, but it's very different. So in all of these transfers, you're going to have records. The records are going to be updated. So of course, with Bitcoin, you can show the full path. So someone can demonstrate where they purchased it, or they can do something else to demonstrate that the money is valid. Just as if you're receiving money in the form of cash, there'll be enhanced checking. So in the past, there have been like the operation of laundries, of casinos, and there are protocols for even businesses that handle a lot of cash. These are things that have been put in place over decades now. So all of that will come back into play when it's considering how Bitcoin operates. But the difference is, rather than having the ease of washing cash through a casino and all of the enhanced rules that they needed to put in play, all of that will be now here is my client, here is the money they've brought in, here is the fact that it's only a small amount, here is a large amount with paperwork. Everything can be streamlined. It can be all automated.
Yeah, the only problem I see is who is allowed to raise the alert, because that could be critical. Yes. Mm.
But all that's going to happen through court orders.
Ah, okay.
Not, I mean, none of this will happen just because someone wants it.
Okay.
I mean, it will be no different to trying to get funds frozen in a bank account. You can call up the bank and go, Joe Bloggs is a con man and he stole my money, and they'll laugh at you. The reality is, if you want something done, you'll need to go to the police, you'll need to get court orders, and then the bank will follow up with that.
So I'm thinking a little bit also on WorldCheck and what Reuters is providing you with PEP data and all the critical data. Maybe this could be connected, but if you say, okay, there must be a court order, and then it's much more clearer.
That's a separate system. So yes. Reuters and things like this could still do compliance checks and go, this is a bit dodgy. That's not going to change because maybe there isn't a court order yet, but there might be. So Reuters will issue, be skeptical on receiving money from this source. And then you might choose to, and you might take the risk, but you will knowingly take the risk if you see the difference.
Yes, I see. Thanks.
All right, HV. Next question kind of fits to that, Craig, from Hodor in the chat. I'm reading it out. Craig, what are your thoughts on seizure of funds without court order based on unfortunate precedent Canada is setting?
Well, I believe they're actually implementing legal actions, etc., to do that. So that is under emergency powers and things like this. And the Canadians have voted him in, and they've made that choice. So you're in a democracy. You have a choice of doing that. My issue, I mean, I don't like what the truckers are doing. I don't believe strikes should ever impact other people's property. I think anyone who's impacting people's property like that is a criminal. Now, if you want, you can just stop and strike. But impacting other people's property is not striking. If you want to be a truck driver, nothing stops you from putting your truck at home and watching Netflix. Guess what? That's a valid protest. As soon as you put your truck on a bridge, you're impacting other people. It's not your bridge. If it's your bridge, that's a different matter, but it's not. So personally, I would do a Judge Dredd and just get rid of the guys, but I don't get that option.
All right.
Do you mind if I just ask a follow-up to that? Because
not at all.
Yeah. First of all, do you mind if I ask a follow-up?
No, go for it.
Okay, so I definitely understand the nuanced nature and like how the protest affected borders and became illegal in nature. But I guess when I say like the precedent, and that isn't as nuanced as it should be, it just seems now that with things going fully digital, they have more ability to leverage massive control. So like, do you see that being balanced in some way with like other assets?
No, not at all. I mean, the problem is you're thinking of Bitcoin in a BTC type world where, like Ethereum, there are accounts and people publish an address. I mean, I talked earlier and put some stuff on Slack about the concept of how you have a master key and then you can create deterministic subkeys. Now, that shouldn't be like the BTC expensive system without privacy. That should be potentially a person with $10,000 could have half their money in coins, the equivalent, and maybe have 5,000 different addresses. And you shouldn't need to worry about managing that. I mean, if you have $10,000, I would recommend you have 5,000 addresses, personally. That would be my way of having everything set. And having that as a true cash system is difficult for a government to go and interact with, unless you're talking about a public address that all these people are sending as a protest thing. The differential would be if you're setting up a system in a cloud server where each individual trucker who is on the system is allocated a small amount of funding, and it's individually done each time and allocated between the system privately, maybe a direct swap or something, then I'm sorry, but the government wouldn't do that. But the differential here is you have a bunch of truckers acting illegally against a bunch of truckers sitting home being funded by people who support the political action. And if you do the second and you keep it legal, I'm sorry, but there's nothing the government can do. If you did the first, there is. So
okay, yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really fully assessed the the option of just striking without it becoming illegal.
And people will go, oh, but they'll send in the military. But the military don't have that many trucks. Once they start doing, I'm going to seize your truck, then you're getting into a different scenario. And then you get into courts going, this guy has seized my truck and I wasn't doing anything wrong. So, I mean, see, you shouldn't be becoming a criminal. You should be making the government either react or respond either positively or negatively.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you very much.
All right, next question from Crumbs. Are there any legal implications to being on the receiving end of illicit funds that are sent outside of the context of an explicit agreement made between sender and receiver? For example, if someone would use Pew Pistol to send tainted coins to your Handcash wallet.
Okay, so if you get tainted funds and you spend them and you don't know where they're from and they're not just pennies. I mean, I wouldn't care too much about pennies. The option of going, oh, well, I've got to clean up all the fragments, no one's going to care. Now, if you consider this as like a bank account, a safe deposit box with a night safe, etc., and someone gives you money and you can't explain where it came from, then there's a problem. If money comes into your bank account and you spend it and it was in error or someone sent it from tainted funds or a fraudster did it to cause you problems, then the first thing you do is you go to the bank and go, this is not my money. Now, there are lots of people who have ended up going to prison because they have gone, oh, well, there's a $50,000 investment in my account. And they've gone off and had spending sprees. Well, guess what? Sorry, that's not acceptable. Just finding money and going, it's mine, doesn't work. I mean, if you have a gold bar,
source of funds.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a gold bar you discover on your property, depending on where you are and what rules are in place, it might be yours. But if you walk down the street and you find a gold bar, it might not be. If you're in a supermarket and you find a £20 note or a $20 note on the floor, don't take it. People have ended up facing criminal charges because, oh, look, there's money in a supermarket. It's mine. It's not. That's actually private property. And if you just decide that someone dropped their money, it's yours, finders, keepers, losers, weepers, then that's theft. Like it or not, it's defined in law as theft. So if you get sent money, and it's, I mean, no one will care if you get a cent, but if someone sends you $1,000, then just send it back to where it came from.
Or don't touch it.
Or don't touch it.
I want to bring
Leave it
up,
there.
this leads on to a question, another question someone else asked in the chat, which is, if a country, say like North Korea, can't get a international court order, should people just steal from them? Doesn't that make them a criminal? And also, can't North Korea like start legal cases in other countries? Sorry,
no, you're getting it wrong. So one, North Korea is not recognized properly, but this would be someone in North Korea having Bitcoin, or North Korean government. It's going to be, it's not going to be you have to go to North Korea to do the action. If you're in Britain, then the situation where you are in is that assets you have are situated here in Britain. There's already case law in this. So if you are domiciled, if you reside in Britain, your assets are in Britain. Now, that means that if someone from North Korea, for instance, stole your Bitcoin, you don't need to go to a North Korean court. The jurisdiction for you as a British resident, British citizen, etc., is Britain. So you go to a British court, and then you don't need to go to a North Korean court. North Korea, who cares? The guy over there who stole it, take it back. North Korean government and their hackers take it, you take it back. You're British, then you go to Britain. If you're American, American.
But on the other side of the thing, what if people, say, from America or Britain steal from people in North Korea, like normal citizens? Do the North Korean normal citizens have some kind of legal recourse?
North Korean normal citizens don't get on the internet.
This is true.
So anyone
try getting their Bitcoins.
Yeah, I mean, you might get Kim Jong-il and his Bitcoin, but go for it. I'm not going to stop you.
Okay, right. Moving on to, we've got maybe time for one more question. I have a question which isn't quite related, but it's on Bitcoin topic from Jack Rogers, who popped in and sent me a message. He wanted to ask about if you'd seen Josh Hensley's suggestion today that BSV's success coming from consumer apps and not enterprise adoption. What is your view on whether it will come from consumer apps or enterprise adoption, or a mixture of both?
It'll have to be a mixture of both, but it's going to have to be cash and used. But probably before that, the way things are going now, is going to be used for writing data, creating financial instruments, all sorts of other things there. It's going to have markers on chain, etc. The ability to get the correct information that Bitcoin's not a cryptocurrency is going to take probably at least a year or two. It's going to be a hard slog on that one. Getting people to trust it is going to be even harder. I mean, until we have things like recovery in place, the average person isn't going to want to have anything to do with it. Institutions aren't. People will need to start understanding that Bitcoin's protocol is fixed before they use it, like TCP, which hasn't changed in 40 years. People who are institutional are not going to touch any of this with a 10-foot pole because it changes. Now think about it. I keep pointing out things like bonds. If you've issued a bond, it could potentially have a 100-year time. 100 years where if there is a change on the protocol, you have to go back and beg developers for something, or you have to go back to all of the bondholders and reissue, causing potentially a taxation event. I mean, it doesn't work that way. I mean, all those institutional investors, none of these people have had anything in their life to do with institutional anything. The only institutions that some of them have been anywhere near involve giving them free orange suits.
All right. I think we are out of time now.
No problem.
Yeah, we're going to call it all. Thank you very much, Craig, and everyone.
Thanks,
for
Craig.
joining in.
You're welcome.
I hope everyone had some good ideas from this. Do you have any last words, Craig, on source of funds?
It's always good to make sure that you record all this. And as we're building applications, we should be looking at making it simple for users. If you look at many sort of banking applications now, they allow you to do things like saving your invoices and taking a snap, like Quicken used to do, or still does for that matter. Take a photo of the invoice you're doing and save it. And potentially that could even be stored with information on the blockchain to prove it all. So.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll leave with that last point. Okay, pausing.
All right.